Test telephone switch to arm light on.
Switching command to internal.
Fuel tank pressure 60, lock 45, check Gregory. Roger.
Minus 130. Securing lock tank. Minus 125.
Switching terminating the lock condition.
Minus 120.
Status check. Command on internal.
Affirmative.
Telemetry and launch condition.
Affirmative.
Missile and internal DC.
Affirmative.
Pressurization complete.
Affirmative.
T-minus 60 seconds and counting.
Range safety test select the switch to arm.
Status check. Range safety arm light on.
Affirmative.
Range ready.
Ready.
Water system ready.
Affirmative.
I have a prep complete light. Locks tanking secured.
Box tanking secured.
T-minus 27 seconds and counting. All recorders and oscillographs to fast. Vernier start.
Lock star tank pressurized. Ground fuel star tank pressurized.
Come on, baby. Come on, honey. Good.
Count. Minus 10, 9, 8. Ignition. Main stage. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Can you believe it? The sun is out. 100 years ago, well, we're at Pacachaga Golf Course right here in Auburn. 100 years ago, Dr. Robert Goddard, his wife Esther Goddard, and this rocket, liquid-fueled rocket, went up and entered man into the space age. That's why we're here. That's why we're celebrating this centennial of this momentous event. We are not, this is not hyperbole, we are not on the moon unless it was an event on March 16th right here in this very spot that started to propel us into the space age. Lauren Monroe here with me. I'm Hank Stoltz, and the man who has been planning this event for over a year, Charles Slatkin, here. Charles, to just set this up for us, why is this monumental? We had rockets before Dr. Robert Goddard. What was it about his shooting off a liquid-fueled rocket on March 16th, 100 years ago, that has us all gathered here today?
Well, Goddard initially wanted to get to Mars or the moon. He had this wonderful epiphany up in a cherry tree as a 17-year-old kid, and he spent the rest of his life really trying to find a way to achieve that goal. And he experimented with regular propulsion. Regular propulsion is basically like a bottle rocket. It gives you a lot of power really quickly, but it's not sustainable. And after a lot of trial and error with regular propulsion, he figured I need to come up with a way to have something that's sustainable and controllable. So through a lot of trial and error and a lot of failures and a lot of blown up rockets, eventually he came across the combination of kerosene and liquid oxygen under pressure to create thrust, but also could be controllable by the amount of fluids that were introduced into the thrust chamber. But think about it, it's a bomb on a stick. Yes, the kerosene and liquid oxygen, what could go wrong? And that's one of the challenges that Goddard had, is there were a lot of failures that ultimately led to this March 16th event.
Well, I'm glad, Lauren, that we are here celebrating this event. as opposed to standing on some scorched earth where the bomb on a stick did not go so well.
It's great to be here. You know, I've always been very passionate about stories and science, and this is just such a great story. I also really want to point out Esther Goddard here. Without her contributions, we wouldn't have maybe even known that Robert Goddard had launched a rocket on this day. She was his videographer, writer, and most of the photographs and movies that you might see of Robert Goddard's experiments were because of her.
I think that's a great point, right? Esther was really the one who has provided this history for us. Now, I notice that they are also dressed for winter here, Charles. So 100 years ago, it was probably just as cool as it is out here today. I also noticed in some of those old videos that Lauren just talked about with Esther Goddard that Robert sent his assistant out to light off one of those rockets. Were they really not sure about what was going to happen?
Well, no, actually they were pretty confident. There's a great picture of this observation post, and if the audience today goes down to the actual launch site, they'll see actually where people were positioned at that event. But Goddard was there actually with the control that would create the lift, and the other gentleman was there with a theodolite to tell him about altitude, so he sent his assistant Kisk to go fire it off. But he had a long stick with a blowtorch, so he had a little distance.
He had a long stick with a blowtorch. Everything was absolutely fine. I love that story. So people can, and probably many people in the area don't even know, that they can come out and see this site. And although all these people are gathered here today because it was 100 years ago, sometimes on March 16th, what you'll see is kind of your random NASA scientist who just is coming out here and he's paying homage to this incredible event. What is going to be happening today? You've been working on this for over a year. We're all gathered here today. Give us an overview of what's going to go on.
Awesome. Well, certainly there's going to be some wonderful luminaries speaking. We have a gentleman from the Goddard Space Flight Center. We have historian Kevin Schindler. We have Peter Chestnut for the town of Auburn, who along with Stephen Coleman has worked tirelessly to pull this whole event off and also make this a huge pivot. We had the National Weather Service give us a lightning alert for Monday, and as of yesterday at 11 o'clock, they turned everything around. And then working with the Central Mass Heart of New England Scouts, they've assembled 100 Goddard rockets that were supplied, donated by the Estes Rocket Company. And throughout the day, they're going to be firing off rockets, but basically 100 rockets will go off through the course of the afternoon. And down at the actual launch site, and we want to make sure everyone gets down there, David Clark has generously supplied us with this funds to build this gorgeous stainless steel outdoor full-scale replica rocket. And the town of Auburn has built all the other elements that were there on that original day, the windshield and the observation post. And we have Esther and Goddard in rough placement of where they were on that actual day. So we definitely encourage everyone to get down there and really have a moment, take some selfies, but just get a sense of kind of what it was like on that cold March day. There's snow on the ground. Goddard's in his big overcoat. Esther's in her heavy overcoat. But you know, they tried this many times. They went out to the launch site over and over with failures. So this was the first successful time that they actually had a successful launch.
Wow, Lauren, you've got the gear on there. You got the pin. You're all ready to go.
I took a look at some photographs of them on this day 100 years ago, and I thought, I think I've got a nice wool coat like that. I'm ready. I'm really excited. There's a great crowd here, all ages. It's windy and it's blustery, but I think we're going to set off some rockets today.
Yeah, I think that part is going to be super exciting. So around 2 o'clock, I guess while they are giving their speeches, we'll have in the background, we'll have some of these rockets going off. And then at 2:30 is the recreation of the actual liquid-fueled rocket. Now, I think a lot of people, when they hear about this or they hear about the history or they think, Robert Goddard shot off this first rocket, they're thinking of Apollo. They're thinking of like some 3-stage rocket going off. Tell us a little bit about what this design is. I'll move away a little bit here so we can get that shot. But this is what it actually looked like.
So this is actually a full-scale replica of the rocket that was assembled by this wonderful gentleman who came to our attention a few weeks ago, Larry McKay, from Texas, a retired Lockheed Martin Skunk Works engineer, and he has 3D printed this rocket and this rocket has flown. So he's actually designed it to be a flying replica, which is really, really amazing. And he's generously brought it up all the way from Texas. We're not going to be able to fly it today for safety concerns with the wind, etc. But I've seen the videos, and we're going to post the videos on social. But it's pretty elegant to watch this thing go off.
Wow, Charles Slatkin, who has worked tirelessly to put all of this together 100 years ago, March 16th, Dr. Robert Goddard, his wife Esther right there as well, such an important part of the story. And this is what was actually fired off, liquid-fueled rocket. And the liquid fuel, that's the key. That's the difference from what the rockets were before. We'd had rockets for thousands of years, Chinese with fireworks. This was, because of this, we can control. And things that Dr. Robert Goddard came up with, we're still using today.
Right, absolutely. Every rocket you see today that's going out into deep space mostly uses liquid fuels. And it's still a combination of an oxidant and an energizer. But there are new technologies on the forefront. There's solar-powered wind sails. There's ion propulsion. Nuclear propulsion is coming back. I think nuclear propulsion is going to actually be something that's going to get us to Mars in half the time moving forward. But I think knowing how much we've progressed in Goddard's time, it's really hard to predict what's in the future. I mean, when you think about it, 100 years ago, we had this first primitive launch. 43 years later, we landed on the moon. And 50 years after that, we've explored every planet in our solar system. And Voyager's out into interstellar space, and that's all in the lifetime of one person. My father lived to be 96, so just in his lifetime, he was able to experience from Goddard to interstellar space, and makes you wonder what humanity can achieve in the next 43 or 50 years moving forward if we keep moving at that pace. But also it's a celebration of how smart people are, how ingenious human beings are at their best. And that's really what I think the Centennial should really celebrate, is our today's Goddards, our scientists and engineers and educators that work tirelessly to expand human knowledge, and our tomorrow's Goddards, all these young people emerging who will define our future. So the Centennial really should be looking forward more so than looking back, something that happened 100 years ago.
It's incredible because, of course, Lauren, Dr. Goddard was so inspired by H.G. Wells, by Jules Verne, that these were the kinds of books that were firing up his imagination, Charles. So he was then really reaching for the stars. You just mentioned about us getting to Mars in a half the time, and he foresaw us going to Mars, or at least us getting the rockets to Mars.
No, he really did. He actually, he was mocked because he really had huge aspirations. He was an incredible visionary. He talked about interstellar migration and the fact that humanity might have to have generation ships to go further and further out into the galaxy. And he wrote about ion propulsion and solar energy being collected in space to power terrestrial cities. And this December, China announced they're building a 1 kilometer array to do just that. But he was mocked because he was so far ahead of his times that the New York Times, as many people know, claimed that he didn't know the most basic fundamentals of physics. You can't have propulsion in a vacuum. And 2 days before Apollo lands on the moon, they print this tiny little retraction.
I love that story.
Yeah, and it is really amazing. I mean, Goddard in just 1 year, I believe, doubled, the launch height of his first launch. And then within 10 years, I think it was almost 200 times. And I think we all kind of see today, like, how fast technology progresses.
And he really did it with a tiny little crew. He had a couple assistants. He was a lousy welder. If you look at the actual models, they're not really beautifully done. But he did it without a lot of resources until Charles Lindbergh read about Robert Goddard and flew up to Worcester, met with him and Esther, and convinced him to meet Harry Guggenheim, his friend. And the Guggenheim Foundation was very interested in the future of aviation, and they funded his further research so he can go to Roswell and have more staff, build a better workshop, and also have a place where he had a lot more range and altitude to do much higher launches, up to 10,000 feet.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Kavanaugh, and as chair of the Auburn Select Board, it is my honor to welcome you back to Auburn. 100 years ago this Monday, this very ground was the Ward Farm, where Robert Goddard launched the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. Today, we gather here at Packagug Golf Course to commemorate that moment in history. On behalf of the town of Auburn, I am honored to welcome our neighbors, our students, and our guests to the site where the space age began. We are privileged today to be joined by a truly distinguished group of guests and speakers. Please join me in welcoming Senator Michael Moore and Representative Paul Frost, members of our legislative delegation, Adam Feldberg and Bob LePage, representing the Office of Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll, the members of the Auburn Select Board and our town manager, Dory Vecchio, Dr. Grace Wang, president of Worcester Polytechnic Institute, Travis Wohlrap and the team from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, Kevin Schindler, Dr. Thomas John Hastings, and our student readers, Sophia Glidden and Joseph Morgan. Thank you all for joining us to witness this historic milestone. Today we are here for one purpose: to stand near the ground where Robert Goddard stood 1 century ago and to honor the moment he successfully launched the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. While Saturday was a celebration of his enduring legacy at the park that bears his name, this afternoon is about the event itself, the grit, the science, and the 41-foot flight that proved the stars were within our reach. We are here to ensure that the flame lit on this field 100 years ago continues to burn bright for the next century. An event 100 years in the making is only possible through the dedication of many people. I want to recognize the two groups that have been the heart and soul of this centennial effort. The Goddard Centennial Committee, led by Stephen Coleman Jr., and the Friends of the Centennial Committee, led by Sylvia Ruiz. I also want to specifically recognize Charles Slatkin and the Wonder Mission. Charles saw the potential for this anniversary to be more than a local ceremony. It could be a national moment of recognition. Through his work on the space trail and his dedication to preserving the Goddard ancestral home, he has helped ensure that this cradle of the space age will never be forgotten. We thank him for his leadership in helping us honor our past while challenging us to inspire tomorrow's Goddards. I would also like to recognize Larry McNay and Scott Lisk, who traveled from Texas to join us for this celebration and who brought with them the remarkable rocket displayed here today. And we are grateful to the members of the Central Massachusetts Space Modeling Society, CMAS, whose expertise and dedication are providing the logistics and safety for the rocket launches here today. Finally, I want to extend a sincere thank you to all of our town employees, from the Department of Public Works to our public safety teams and administrative staff, whose work behind the scenes has made these events possible. It is now my pleasure to introduce Peter Chestnut, who will provide our opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair Kavanaugh, and good afternoon to everyone gathered here in Auburn and to those joining us through the live stream. Earlier today, we gathered in Goddard Park to honor the legacy of Robert Goddard. Now we stand on the ground where that legacy truly began. The ground beneath our feet is where the age of modern rocketry began. Great journeys often begin in quiet places, and 100 years ago, one began here. On this field, a small rocket rose in the sky and proved that a liquid-fueled rocket could lift itself from the ground and fly. Later in our program, we'll reenact the moment when that small rocket first rose from this field on March 16, 1926. Nearly a century ago, Robert Goddard wrote words that have inspired the explorers who followed in his footsteps. It is difficult to say what is impossible, for the dream of yesterday is the hope of today and the reality of tomorrow. For every problem that is solved, another is created, and the way to the solution is through the mind and the hand of man. Earlier, when we gathered at Goddard Park, it was to celebrate the dream, the legacy, and the monuments we have built in our town center. But today, We are here for the reality. We have come to this ground to witness the result of that mind and hand and to mark the place where the impossible became history. It has been said that if the dunes of North Carolina gave us our wings, this field in Auburn gave us the stars. This is the Kitty Hawk of rocketry. We are not the first to recognize the significance of this ground. For a century, this field has been a place of pilgrimage for those who understood what happened here. It began with a small group who stood in the snow on this farm. Dr. Percy Roop and Harry Sachs, who sheltered behind an improvised wooden door as they watched the birth of the space age. On that cold afternoon in 1926, only a handful of people stood here to witness what happened. While Robert himself was always looking towards the next horizon, it was Esther Goddard who became the guardian of this site's memory. As a direct participant in the 1926 launch, she ensured that the exact location was preserved for history. 60 years ago on Monday, that history was permanently marked when a modest granite obelisk was placed at the site of the first launch. We have a remarkable photograph from that dedication, Esther Goddard standing behind the obelisk with Werner von Braun and Charles Lindbergh. Esther was the witness returning to the place she helped make famous. Von Braun represented the next generation of rocketry, the engineer who would lead the development of the Saturn V rocket that carried astronauts to the moon. And Lindbergh represented the bridge between two eras of flight. Just as he looked back to the Wright brothers and Kitty Hawk as the foundation of his own transatlantic flight, he recognized that the liquid-fueled rocket ignited on this farm represented the next giant leap. He saw the Kitty Hawk in the soil and helped Goddard's work from a quiet farm to the world's stage. Today, we have brought that history out of the shadows. If you look towards the far side of the pond, between the water and the fairway, you will see that obelisk. At its base, we have recreated the scene of that 1926 morning. There you will find a full-scale replica of Nell in her launch stand, protected by the windscreen and safety wall built by Robert and his team. We invite you to visit that recreation later today to see the humble, hand-built beginnings of the space age, verified by those who were actually there. And to bring that history to life for all of us gathered here, we will launch a scale version of Nell during our program, ensuring that the flame first lit on this field a century ago continues to burn bright. The next day, Robert Goddard recorded the event in his journal with the quiet understatement of a scientist, a simple sentence describing an extraordinary moment. As we stand here today, we celebrate a milestone of physics and engineering, the day the rocket flew. But for Robert Goddard, his true anniversary day was something more personal. While the world remembers the March launch on this farm, Robert spent every year of his life celebrating a different date, the quiet autumn afternoon when his vision was first born. To understand where that persistence began, we must go back even farther than 1926, back to the 17-year-old boy in a Worcester cherry tree, who looked towards the horizon and saw something no one else could. To begin our journey, I invite Sophia Glidden to share the story of that first anniversary.
On the afternoon of October 19, 1899, a 17-year-old boy climbed a cherry tree behind a barn in Worcester. The boy was Robert Hutchings Goddard. Years later, he wrote about that moment. It was one of the quiet, colorful afternoons of sheer beauty which we have in October in New England. And as I looked towards the fields at the east, I imagined how wonderful it would be to make some device which had even the possibility of ascending to Mars. In that quiet revelation, among the branches, a dream was born. He called it his anniversary day, the insult when imagined became a lifelong pursuit.
Dad, why'd you decide to bring the kids down here today?
We thought it'd be good to get them involved with history and some town events. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And what do you think? Do you think that one of these two might end up taking a trip to the moon someday?
If anybody would be a him or her. One of them will, yeah, definitely.
What do you think about that? Do you have any interest in some space travel yourself?
Kinda.
Kind of. That's fantastic. How about you?
Do you want to go to the moon, Eddie?
You do a lot of building with Legos, right, bud?
Yeah. What do you think it takes? What do you think it takes to be an astronaut? You know that we're going to have some astronauts trying to get to the moon later this year. Historic, 100 years later, we've got a historic flight later this year. What do you think it might take?
You have to be really smart and brave.
Well, that's right. I think you got it. It takes it to know it.
Yeah.
As Sophia just shared, that October afternoon changed Robert Goddard forever. Reflecting on the moment he climbed down from those branches, he later wrote, "I was a different boy when I descended that tree from when I ascended. Existence, at last, seemed very purposive. That sense of purpose stayed with him for nearly 3 decades. Through years of math and lonely experiments, leading him eventually to this snowy field in Auburn. Recognizing the importance of where it all began, he even returned to photograph that cherry tree, capturing the small ladder he had built leaning against it, preserving the place where his dream first took place. On March 16th, 1926, that pursuit finally took flight. Here, on the fairways of what was then the Ward Farm, he launched the world's first liquid fuel rocket. It rose only 41 feet, but it opened the pathway to modern science exploration. The cherry tree that witnessed his inspiration did not last forever. It fell in the Great New England Hurricane of 1938. In his diary, Goddard wrote simply, "Cherry tree down, have to carry on alone." But the vision that took root in that tree did not fall. It carried humanity beyond the fields he looked upon that October afternoon, beyond the atmosphere, and toward the planets he once imagined. As astronomer Carl Sagan famously described this journey, from the cherry tree to Mars. Today, as we commemorate the centennial of that first liquid fuel rocket here on the field where it occurred, we remember the climb into the cherry tree that helped launch the space age and the vision of Robert H. Goddard, who dared to look east and see the future. I would now like to introduce our historian for the weekend, Kevin Schindler, author of Robert Goddard's Massachusetts.
Hello. I come to you from Flagstaff, Arizona, and Lowell Observatory, whose founder, Percival Lowell, grew up just a couple miles from Robert Goddard. Every great hero's journey begins with a moment of awakening, a spark that changes the course of a life. For Robert Goddard, that moment came, as we heard, on October 19th, 1899, when he climbed a cherry tree in his Worcester backyard. As he looked out over the fields and sky, he imagined a machine that could carry people far beyond Earth. He later wrote, from that day forward, he never stopped thinking about space. The cherry tree dream, as we've heard, was his call to action, to a purpose, his moment of clarity, the beginning of a journey that would eventually lead him here to Auburn, at what was then Aunt Effie's farm. 100 years ago, on this very ground, Goddard answered that call. With a modest rocket and a belief that defied the limits of his time, he launched the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. It flew only 2.5 seconds and rose only 41 feet. The rocket's reach was short, but it marked the moment that humanity entered a new era, and its legacy stretches across the cosmos. Robert Goddard was a legendary scientist, engineer, and visionary, and his contributions forever changed our place in the universe. As the Wright brothers enabled our conquest of the skies above, Goddard drove us to the universe beyond. And as we heard, just as Kitty Hawk became the birthplace of powered flight, Auburn became the birthplace of modern rocketry. 2 quiet landscapes that launched 2 extraordinary journeys. When Goddard lit that engine on March 16, 1926, he crossed from the world of what was known into the world of what was possible. Yet like all heroes, he faced trials. Many dismissed the ideas as fantasy. Funding was scarce. Recognition was rare. Some mocked him openly. But he pressed on, guided by imagination, perseverance, and the memory of that cherry tree vision that had first shown him the stars. But no hero travels alone. At Goddard's side was Esther, his wife and steadfast companion. She photographed his experiments, documented his breakthroughs, and stood with him through the doubt, ridicule, and isolation. Esther was his partner and the one who helped carry the dream when the burden grew heavy. The rocket that rose from this field was small in stature but mighty in consequence. It proved that liquid fuel could lift a craft skyward, the essential breakthrough that would one day carry humans to the moon and beyond. Goddard's journey, of course, did not end with this flight. His influence traveled further than even he could have imagined. During the Apollo 11 mission in 1969, when the members of our species first set foot on another world for the first time, Buzz Aldrin carried a copy of the first book to the moon with him. That book was a miniature biography of Robert Goddard. In that act, Aldrin honored the man whose ideas made that giant leap possible. A small book carried across 250,000 miles became a symbol of gratitude from one explorer to another. It was a reminder that the hero's journey, begun here in Auburn, ultimately helped humanity take its first steps onto another world. Today, that same spirit of exploration lives on in the people, places, and organizations around the world, such as the Wonder Mission, led by the inimitable Charles Slatkin. As we heard about the Wonder Mission earlier, it's a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating initiatives and experiences that inspire the next generation of scientists, engineers, educators, innovators, and visionaries. This mission embodies the next chapter of the story, a new generation answering the call to adventure, pushing boundaries, and daring to imagine what lies beyond the horizon. The Wonder Mission stands as proof that the spark Goddard ignited here still burns brightly, inspiring new heroes of all ages to arise. A centennial is not just a celebration of the past, it's a moment to recognize the arc of a story still unfolding. Goddard's journey teaches us the values that shape every great quest. The power of imagination, because Goddard saw possibilities where others saw limits. The value of perseverance, because he kept working even when the world doubted him. And the importance of curiosity, because Goddard never, ever stopped asking, what if? These are the qualities that carried Goddard from the cherry tree to this field, and from this field into the pages of the history books. In the hero's journey, the final stage is the return, when the hero brings back wisdom, gifts, and inspiration for the community. Today, we are the community receiving that gift. Goddard's legacy is not just technological, it's aspirational. It tells us that greatness can emerge from quiet places, that bold ideas can take root in small towns, and that the next breakthrough may come from someone standing right here looking up at the sky with wonder. As we honor the centennial, we're invited to step into the story ourselves. The next century of exploration will be shaped by those who choose to dream boldly, learn deeply, and support the next generation of explorers. In his valedictorian speech at his high school graduation, Goddard said, "The dream of yesterday is the hope of today and the reality of tomorrow." His journey began with a dream, and ours can too. Here's to all of us turning our dreams into reality. Thank you.
Here are a whole lot of people who are getting ready to shoot off some rockets. You guys pretty excited about that? Yeah. All right. Had you guys all heard of Dr. Robert Goddard before today? Yeah, you had. How did you hear about him?
I heard it on Friday.
You had learned about him already before you came? Yeah, very, very cool. Now, how many of you are going to be shooting off a rocket here today? Oh, everybody's going to be shooting off a rocket here today.
We learned about Robert Goddard for like 8. Like 8, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I learned about it at school.
Whoa, so in your class, leading right up here, they just kept talking to you about Dr. Robert Goddard to bring you out here? That is so very, very cool. Guys, say hello to Lauren. She's got a question for you to see who's heading off to the moon later on in life.
I know. Could you believe it that later this year, we're probably going to see a manned mission to the moon? Anyone here think that they might want to take a trip to the moon?
Take him over to that table.
He's ready.
And what do you think it takes to train to be an astronaut to go to the moon? Yeah?
Maybe it takes a lot of training to see if like you get hit by an asteroid and then like you have to learn how to fix it.
Fantastic.
Get right in there, buddy.
Do a backflip.
A backflip. You know, you do have to be in very good shape if you want to go to the moon or get into a spaceship. And zero gravity is no joke.
I think that you need to have courage because if you don't have courage, you might be too scared to go up to the moon.
And can anybody give me some words to describe what it was like to see these rockets launched today?
It was really powerful and really exciting just seeing it go pop up all the way up. Was that 41 feet or higher?
40.
That's a good question. Did these rockets that got shot off today actually go higher than Dr. Robert Goddard's when he first shot his off?
And what do you think?
Maybe. That's a good one.
The first one went 2 seconds, and then it went higher, and the higher question went 22 feet.
All right, go ahead.
All right, we got to let you guys go and get your rockets
attention.
and be able to shoot them off. That's the most fun for sure.
Good afternoon. You guys are lucky here for this one and not the morning ceremony. It was cold. So I have from the State Senate 2 acknowledgments. But first, as a historian who was speaking, if you think back to, his aspirational dreams when he was working on this experiment, if he were able to come back today to see how his experiment has affected our lives and continues to affect our lives, from all the different technologies that's being used to, as we're exploring right now, trying to put someone leapfrog from the moon to Mars. It can all stem back to the experiment that was done here. And what a legacy. Think about that. If you have a family member to think back, that you've got a family member who inspired all this technology, all these accomplishments in our world, it really is astonishing. So I have 2 things, 2 recognitions from the State Senate. The first I have is a citation. Be it known, the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends its congratulations to the town of Auburn in recognition of having the immense honor of celebrating the Goddard Centennial at the location in Auburn of Robert Goddard's first liquid-fueled rocket launch. And be it further known, the Massachusetts Senate extends best wishes for continued success, that the citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to and a copy of transmitted by the clerk. It's signed by myself, Senator Moore, but Senate President Karen Spilka, and I guess Steve or the town manager or the.
Thank you so much.
I also have a resolution that was passed by the Senate last week commending the town of Auburn and the Robert and Esther Goddard Centennial Committee for its recognition of the 100th anniversary of the historic launch of the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. Whereas the town of Auburn and the Robert and Esther Goddard Centennial Committee will recognize the 100th anniversary of Dr. Robert Hutchings Goddard's first liquid-fueled rocket launch at events to be held March 14th through 16th in the town of Auburn. And whereas, in a historic achievement that served as a precursor for the United States space program on March 16th, 1926. And I think about that, for the space program, which now we have our own Space Force. On March 16th, Dr. Robert Hutchings Goddard launched the world's first liquid rocket from the Asa Ward Farm in the town of Auburn, a feat that earned him recognition as the father of modern rocket propulsion. And whereas in 1998, legislation was enacted by the Massachusetts House and Senate and signed into law by Governor Argio Paul Salucci, establishing an annual observance of March 16th as Dr. Robert Hutchings Goddard Day in the Commonwealth. And whereas the Auburn Public Schools renamed their mascot and the school department logo the Auburn Rockets to honor and recognize Dr. Robert Hutchings Goddard and his achievement in launching the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. And whereas the town of Auburn has incorporated the historic launch of the world's first liquid-fueled rocket into the fabric of the community and has continually celebrated and honored the achievements of Dr. Robert Hutchings Goddard and his wife, Esther Goddard, who recorded and preserved her husband's research and accomplishments. Now, therefore, be resolved that the Massachusetts Senate hereby commends the town of Auburn and the Robert and Esther Goddard Centennial Committee on their recognition of the 100th anniversary of the historic launch of the world's first liquid-fueled rocket, and be it further resolved that a copy of these resolutions be transmitted by the Senate clerk to the town of Auburn. And it's signed by myself, and it's also signed by the Senate President, Karen E. Spilka, and I guess Town Manager, or no, Dan?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you pretty excited to shoot this rocket off? He's like, hey, I am next in line, and I'm not going to miss out on that. Lauren just wants to talk to you about when you are in one of those rockets and you're heading up into space.
You're going to go to space?
Yeah, what does it feel like to you to imagine yourself to maybe be in a rocket someday? Have you thought of it?
Would you want to go to space, Jack?
Yes.
You think it would be hard or easy?
Hard.
Yeah, how does it feel bringing these rockets up to launch today? You excited?
Good afternoon. Oh, that we can, as a former instructor and teacher, I know we can do better than that. Good afternoon. There we go. I think it's important to reflect upon today of the journey of that young child, like those in the field who were experimenting, were supported by their teachers in a local public school, incredible higher education partners who gave somebody the opportunity to dream, to enact a vision of what may be possible, to explore potential, and to be supported by a broad community who valued education, valued science, technology, engineering, and math, and supported that journey. A commitment in the Commonwealth that continues today, where we have the strongest innovation economy, perhaps in the world, certainly in the country, where we continue to invest resources in our schools, in our higher education partners, to ensure that all have an opportunity to dream and to achieve success here in the Commonwealth. I thank you all for coming out today to celebrate. I inspire you to continue to make those investments, to support those students, to invite them to dream about their futures. And I'm going to ask my colleague Adam to join me in a proclamation from the governor's office.
Thank you so much, Assistant Secretary LePage, for all you do for our Commonwealth at the Executive Office of Education. Very honored to be here, and in a moment we'll present this proclamation on behalf of the governor and lieutenant governor. First, I do want to thank the town and the town manager and select board and Steve for all their great work in coordinating this with the committee, and to Senator Moore and Representative Frost and Worcester Mayor Petty, WPI President Wang, and all the other distinguished guests for being here today. I also want to point out a colleague in the audience, Ben Linville Engler. He's the Deputy Director and he's the lead for Commonwealth of Massachusetts Defense Sector Initiatives, and it's how the Commonwealth got connected here today for this event. Ben's here with his son and loves rockets, and I'm very glad to have him here today. This is also extra special for me as a member of the governor's staff who coordinates defense sector, military base, Space Force initiatives out of the governor's office. I'm also a Clark alum, and I spent numerous hours at the Robert Goddard Library 2 decades ago, and just knowing that building, which was dedicated just a few months after a very important date. Who knows what happened July 20th, 1969? That's right, the moon landing, right? That library, the Goddard Library, was dedicated just a few months after that, and I spent a lot of time there when I was a student at Clark, and so it's extra special I get to present this proclamation today from the governor and lieutenant governor. It's a proclamation that reads, whereas Massachusetts-born Dr. Robert H. Goddard is recognized internationally as the father of the space age, and whereas March 16th, 2026 marks the 100th anniversary of Dr. Goddard's successful launch of the world's first modern liquid-fueled rocket at his aunt's farm in Auburn, Massachusetts, and whereas Dr. Goddard was the first person to pursue the bold vision of pointing skyward, leaving Earth and leading the effort to explore the universe, and whereas this historic milestone is being honored and celebrated locally and nationally as the first launch centennial. And whereas we also celebrate today's and tomorrow's Goddards, the innovators, visionaries, scientists, students, educators, engineers, and dreamers who work tirelessly, often without recognition, to expand human knowledge and benefit humanity. And whereas Dr. Goddard's wife, Esther Goddard, was a true collaborator and instrumental partner in his success. She photographed and filmed every launch, fabricated parachutes, published and promoted his research, preserved his legacy, and defended his patents long after his passing. And whereas Dr. Goddard was born in his family's multi-generational home in Worcester, Massachusetts, he attended South High School, where he was inspired by his teachers, Calvin Andres and Miss Field. He graduated as class valedictorian. And whereas Dr. Goddard continued his education at Worcester Polytechnic Institute, WPI, and Clark University, where he conducted his research and built the first modern rocket. And whereas Worcester's unique combination of educational infrastructure, industrial capability, and sustained institutional support created the ecosystem that enabled Goddard to become the father of modern rocketry. And whereas Goddard's story served as a powerful reminder of the importance of investing in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. And whereas by recognizing, elevating, and honoring Robert and Esther Goddard and those who carry forward their spirit, we can celebrate Massachusetts' legacy of transformative innovation and its role ushering in the space age to help inspire the next generation. Now, therefore, I, Maura T. Healy, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim March 16, 2026, to be Robert Goddard Day, and urge all the residents of the Commonwealth to take cognizance of this event and participate fittingly in its observance. Signed by the Governor, Maura T. Healy, the Lieutenant Governor, Kimberly Driscoll, and the Secretary of the Commonwealth, William Francis Galvin. Congratulations and thank you for having us here today.
Thank you very much. Offering an insight, I'd like to introduce Pete Chestnut. Come up for the rocket launch, the moment we've all been waiting for.
All right, everyone. We're just about the time on Monday, about 2:30 when this occurred. Now, I have them on the phone because they can't hear us from up here, so I need all the little kids, everyone to point your attention down towards that CMAS flag down there, blowing in the breeze. And we're all going to count down very loudly together. We're just going to watch. All right, is everyone ready? Okay, we'll give the kids a chance to get in front there. Nice and loud. You don't have to go down there. We're going to see it from here. Okay, let's start the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch.
So just a moment ago, thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here. Just a moment ago, we watched a rocket rise to the sky. 100 years ago, on this very field in Auburn, Massachusetts, a small group of people witnessed something the world had never seen before. In 1926, this place was known simply as Aunt Effie's Farm, where Robert H. Goddard came to test an idea many believed impossible. In his journal that evening, he wrote simply, March 16, went to Auburn with Henry Sachs in the morning. Esther and Mr. Roop came out at 1 p.m., tried rocket at 2:30. It rose 41 feet and went 184 feet in 2.5 seconds after the lower half of the nozzle had burned off. A brief and humble entry for a moment that would change the world. It was the first small step for rocketry, a 41-foot ascent that would eventually lead to a 250,000-mile journey, and to those words, a small step for man and a giant leap for mankind. The next day, Goddard returned to his journal. At this time, his words captured something of the wonder of what had happened after he had reflected. Quote, the first flight with a rocket using liquid propellants was made yesterday at Aunt Effie's farm in Auburn. A simple statement again. He described the stillness of that winter day and the strange pause before the rocket rose up into the sky. The day was clear and comparatively quiet. Even though the release was pulled, the rocket did not rise at first, but the flame came out and there was a steady roar. Then the rocket came to life. After a number of seconds, it rose slowly until it cleared the frame, and then at express train speed, curving over to the left and striking ice and snow, still going at a rapid rate. Then Goddard recorded something more than mechanics. He captured the feeling of it. It looked almost magical as it rose, as if it said, I've been here long enough. I think I'll be going somewhere else, if you don't mind. Esther Goddard, his wife, described it in her own way. It was like a fairy or an aesthetic dancer as it started off. That rocket's brief flight, 41 feet into the air, lasting just 2.5 seconds, opened the door to modern spaceflight. From this snowy field in Auburn, my hometown, to satellites orbiting Earth, to astronauts walking on the moon, to spacecraft exploring the planets, and even the vastness between the stars. All of it traces back to that quiet afternoon in March 1926, when a small rocket rose from the snow and the journey to space had begun. But for most of the world, that day was a secret. Goddard didn't seek the spotlight. He sought the truth. He was a scientist. Apart from his small team, very few people could say that they were truly there, who felt the steady roar and saw the flash of fire against the New England snow. One of those people was my father. He was 10 years old. While Robert Goddard was recording the technical success in his journal and Esther was seeing aesthetic dancers in the air, a young boy was standing in this very field watching the impossible happen with his own eyes. The story he carried with him and the story he passed down to me is not just about a machine that flew 41 feet. It's about what it felt like to be a witness to a miracle. The following story was told by my late father, Gerald Patrick Hastings Sr., and I am his second son and the third of his 4 children. When I was a student at Boston College, I used to come home on the weekends to see my girlfriend, and I would go back to Boston on Sunday evenings, and my dad would drive me back. Those hour-long drives were a perfect chance to chat with Dad and get to know more about his life. I peppered him with questions about his childhood, youth, and service in the Army as a technical sergeant in General Patton's 3rd Army. Dad was born on November 28, 1915, and his parents had 5 siblings who lived in Quinsigamon Village, the Greenwood Street area. So here's what Dad told me on one of those drives back to Boston College. One afternoon in March 1926, Dad and his friends climbed up the hill from Quinsig Village to the Ward's farm to go sledding on the newly fallen snow. While they were sledding, they saw a vehicle pull up on the property. It didn't look like farm equipment, so it piqued their curiosity. They watched from a distance as 4 people in heavy coats got out of the vehicle and removed some rather large objects. They walked through the snowy field, stopping here at what we now know as the launch site, actually down there. Dad commented that the scene felt very strange. He and his friends continued looking on with great interest as the nameless visitors took whatever it was they had removed from the vehicle, assembled the pieces, and Dad was only 10 years old at the time, so you can imagine how his imagination soared. Suddenly, they saw fire and smoke and heard a loud noise as some object shot up into the air. Afterwards, the strangers in dark coats ran through the snow, gathered up what it was they had brought and set on fire, and they put the pieces back into their vehicle. Then they left the scene. Dad and his friends shook their heads at each other, completely baffled by what they had just witnessed. And they continued sledding like you would expect them to. Sometime later, they learned that Dr. Robert Goddard had launched the world's first liquid-propelled rocket at Aunt Effie's Ward farm on that very afternoon they were sledding. As they grew up, they gradually realized the significance of the event they had witnessed firsthand. He also shared this story with my younger brother, Brian, who's here today, too. Dad was an honest and trustworthy person. I believe to this day that he and his friends had witnessed one of the most momentous events of the 20th century, and I only wish he could be here. This day was important to history as the Wright brothers' first flight at Kitty Hawk in 1903. This moment changed the world forever and secured his place, Dr. Goddard's place, as the father of modern rocketry. News of the day said there were no witnesses except Goddard, his wife Esther, and 2 assistants from Clark University. Little did they know that a few boys from Quinsig Village were looking on when they lit this torch that ushered in the space age. Thank you so much for your attention.
You got some windy conditions today.
Yeah, it's a little windier than we like, but it's safe enough with the size rockets that we're launching right now.
Fantastic. Now tell us a little bit about what people saw here. You actually had a replica of the Goddard rocket.
Yeah, it was Nell, and launched off that launch pad right there. And it was a subscale model of Nell, but a really accurate model. And it flew pretty well.
Fantastic. Now, we got to make sure everybody's safe. I know that you're trying to keep the kids out of the launch area. It's tough when they see that rocket go. They want to go out there for rocket recovery. But tell us a little bit about what it is that is going on, like right here, where they're actually getting ready to launch these rockets.
Yep, some of the local scouts built some rockets. They built 100 rockets, one for every year of the anniversary of Goddard's flight. And so we've been helping them set up on the launch pad here, and we let the people that are built the rockets count down from 5, and then we launch it for them.
I love it. Now, are you actually going to just set these off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
Well, yeah, we do. We usually go in order, and we don't necessarily load them all up, but if they're ready, we'll load them all up, and we'll go one at a time, or we can actually launch a couple at a time if they want to do a drag race.
I think that would look pretty cool. Guys, what we'll do is, Lauren, I think we're ready to see them start to shoot this off. About how long until these will be ready to go?
Well, we have to make sure that everybody's away, at least 15 feet away from the launch pad before we launch anything, so we try to load up as many that are ready. And then when everybody's cleared away, we'll count down from 5 and launch them.
How was that launch? That was pretty awesome to see. It's quite sacred ground we're standing on here, and I'm just sort of feeling it myself. As soon as I got here, I sort of took it all in, and it's remarkable that we get to stand here almost 100 years later and take in the significance of it. Now, I'm not going to repeat all of that, and I realize all the experts are behind me here, but I will say I do come from NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, and that's his namesake NASA Center, and we try to carry that legacy the best we can. A lot of times the visitors come and we're describing Robert Goddard's accomplishments, his accolades, and the reasons that the research he did enables us at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration to do what we do. I would not be standing here today if not for Robert Goddard. And frankly, none of you would be, unless you're a golfer, of course, but even today is not the best conditions for that, right? And I also wanted to invite everybody here, if you want to come inside the clubhouse here, I brought a little piece of history with me. This was donated to NASA Goddard Space Flight Center at some time in the 70s. I wasn't sure from who, but this is a real rocket cone, a nose cone from a rocket that Dr. Goddard worked on in the 1930s when he was in Roswell, New Mexico, doing his research there. So you can come in, you can touch it. You can touch it. You can take a picture with it if you like. And anyway, it's a glorious piece of history. He touched this, so you can touch it now too. Take a picture with it, take it in. With that said, I want to send the congratulations to the town of Auburn and Worcester. I probably didn't say that right, and I apologize. To the folks behind me and everybody that's been a part of this celebration, if you're here today, congratulations, right? You all are carrying on the legacy of what I've done this morning at Goddard Park as the cradle of the space age, right? We talk about Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. I would hearken this area of the country is, it's where it all began. All right. Right now we have 2 interstellar probes, as mentioned, that have left the solar system, and that all traces back to this field. We have the Parker Solar Probe, which is studying the sun. Literally, I made this example this morning. I'll repeat it. If the sun was on one end zone of a football field and the Earth was on the other, the Parker Solar Probe is on the 3-yard line near the sun. That's crazy. That is how close we are studying the sun. All right, and that was all because of what took place in this field 100 years ago. In just over 2 weeks, we are anticipating to launch 4 astronauts farther from Earth than we have ever sent humans before. And to me, that's for everybody, that's a huge, remarkable human achievement. And it's great that it's coming just 100 years after the man that made it happen. And when you think about that time scale, it was 1926 to 1969 was at 43 years. And then, look at us now. We're about to establish a permanent moon base. And that all starts with Artemis 2's human flight. That's going to go around the moon and come back. But they're going thousands of miles past the moon before they come home. And it's going to be an amazing trip. And so be prepared to get some amazing footage, some 4K quality views of the far side of the moon, which we don't get to see ever here on Earth. So that should be interesting and fascinating too. There's a lot to look forward to. And, the other thing I want to mention here is Robert Goddard, from reading all his notes and his history, there's a lesson to be taken from that too. If you're out there and you're studying something, even if you don't think it's important, take notes, right? Record that history, because you never know if generations from now somebody's going to be reading that. I mean, we know so much about Goddard because he recorded so much, right? He was a very, from what I come to understand, he was a kind of a private person, right? Didn't really take the criticism, to heart, but he didn't like it either. So, I'm just going to be in the shadows and I'm going to do my work. And that's what he did. And it's very sad that he died before he could see a rocket leave our atmosphere, one of his liquid fuel designs. But at the same time, he knew it was coming. So you can rest assured knowing that he knew that his work was very important, and he had the vision to see it through. And that's probably the most important part of this. You can sit down and you can do all the math, but to actually execute, right? And that's what NASA does too. Right? We do the impossible every day. That's what we're trying. We're trying to do something that's never been done. And so because of that, we understand and recognize the importance of what took place here. And so again, it's an absolute honor. Thank you for having us. And on behalf of the National Space and Aeronautics Administration, congratulations and Godspeed with carrying on this legacy. You guys are doing a great job. So thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. As you know, Dr. Goddard was born and raised in the city of Worcester. And Worcester has been an amazing partner and shares with us this historic moment as partners in Dr. Goddard's journey. I would like to recognize Worcester's Mayor, Joe Petty, who is here with us this afternoon. Welcome, Mayor Petty. And the childhood home that Dr. Goddard grew up in is now owned by an amazing organization called the Wonder Mission that was founded by Charles Slatkin. And Charles is here with us today. I don't know where you are, Charles, but Charles had a vision of what was going to happen on this field today, well over a year ago, that we've been working towards. And his right hand, Mr. Phil Nidry, they were very instrumental in helping this committee in putting this together over the last year. So thank you, Charles, and thank you, Phil. The amazing educational institutions that are in the city of Worcester, Dr. Goddard attended WPI. And here with us this afternoon, the president of WPI, Dr. Grace Wong.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here in Auburn at the very site of the 1926 launch where the space age began. Standing here today, it's hard not to feel a sense of awe. 100 years ago, on this very ground, Robert Goddard launched the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. The flight lasted only a few seconds, as you heard from others, and it rose just a few dozen feet. But in that moment, humanity took its first real step towards the space. Today, we celebrate the man who started it. At Worcester Polytechnic Institute, we are especially proud of Robert Goddard and his deep ties with the university. He was a WPI graduate, class of 1908. He later taught physics at the WPI, and some of his earliest research happened actually at the WPI campus. Those experiments captured something that still defines WPI today. The belief that theory must test it through practice, and that curiosity must lead to the real-world impact. That spirit helped shape Goddard's journey, and it continues to shape generations of WPI's faculty, students, and staff. Today, our people are conducting space-related research that continues to push boundaries of science and engineering. And the spirit of Goddard's exploration, and he has embodied even more alive on campus at WPI today. Our researchers are studying everything from advanced manufacturing for space applications to how materials, fluids, and electronics behave in the unique conditions of space. And much of this work happens in collaboration with industry partners and local companies here, helping strengthen the innovation economy right here in Commonwealth. And our graduates carry that work even further. WPI alumni are helping shape the future of the space industry at organizations like SpaceX, NASA, Blue Origin, and across the growing aerospace industry. And others are applying space-enabled technologies to fields ranging from communications to climate monitoring and to medicine to advanced manufacturing. And some of you probably heard about our former department chair of chemical engineering, Al Sacco Jr. When he was at the WPI and back in 1995, he also blasted into the space and into the Space Shuttle Columbia as a payload specialist. And during that mission, he and his colleagues conducted experiments in material science, biotechnology, combustion science, and fluid mechanics inside the Space Lab module. Scientists and astronauts like Al Sacco carry forward the legacy that begin right here. They not only advance our understanding of science, they inspire the next generation to pursue careers in science, engineering, and technology, and to imagine what is possible. And that perhaps is the most powerful legacy of Robert Goddard. One person with a bold idea can change the trajectory of humanity. And that idea also needs a community that encourage experimentation, mentorship, and discovery. And that ecosystem helped shape Goddard's work a century ago. It continues to fuel innovation today. WPI is proud to be part of that story. 100 years ago, a rocket rose from this very field and launched the space age. Today, we celebrate not just a historic moment, but the enduring spirit of curiosity, ingenuity, and determination that make it possible. And as we look to the future, WPI, along with all of you, are ready to continue to serve as the launchpad for more than innovators, just as we did for Robert Goddard. Thank you.
They're pretty safety conscious here, Lauren, keeping everybody safe.
Absolutely.
And making sure everybody's moved back when they go to shoot those rockets off.
And it sure is fun watching all the kids run after the rockets, too.
All right, we're going to launch these rockets. Let's take a look.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, who's number 4? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, who's on pad number 6?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
There you go, well done. Okay, who's pad 7?
Four, 3, 2, 1, blast off.
Okay. That's a mic drop moment, I guess. Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
After the success of the first flight here in Auburn, Robert Goddard didn't stop. He was already looking past the next field and toward the next century. Reflecting on the future of his work, he once wrote, "The view is always changing. What was once a distant dream is now a problem to be solved. We must remember that no matter how far we have come, there is always a farther horizon." Robert Goddard once said that we should not be discouraged by how small our first steps might seem. He knew that the 41 feet he gained on this field were just the beginning of a journey that would never truly end. As a student today, I am proud to stand on the ground where that journey began.
Chris, just take this up. Thank you, Joe. Great job. As Joseph just stated, Robert Goddard knew that his work here was only the beginning. Today, as we commemorate the centennial of the first liquid-fueled rocket launched by Robert H. Goddard, we remember that the path to the stars did not begin at a space center or at a distant launch pad. It began here in Massachusetts, in the imagination of a young boy sitting high in a cherry tree on a quiet October afternoon. Looking out across an autumn field, he wondered how a device might rise towards the sky and even reach Mars. Years later, that dream brought him here to this field in Auburn, Massachusetts. Here on March 16th, 1926, a small rocket rose from the snow and proved that liquid-fueled flight was possible. Among those present that day was his wife, Esther Goddard, whose support, encouragement, and belief in his work sustained him through the years of experimentation. Standing nearby with a motion picture camera, she recorded moments from that historic day, including the ignition of the rocket's motor and Robert Goddard standing beside the empty launch frame after the flight. Through her camera, she preserved a glimpse of the moment when the age of liquid-fueled rockets began. Because of that vision, because of the persistence that followed, humanity eventually reached the moon and beyond. From a quiet cabbage field in Auburn, the path to the stars began. Just as the dunes of Kitty Hawk marked the beginning of flight in the air, this field marked the beginning of flight beyond it. More than a century ago, Robert Goddard told his high school classmates, "It is difficult to say what is impossible, for the dream of yesterday is the hope of today and the reality of tomorrow." And here on this field where that dream first took flight, we remember Robert and Esther Goddard, and the dream that carried humanity to the stars and into the vastness between them. The dream of yesterday became the hope of today, and the reality we celebrate here in Auburn. Over the course of this centennial celebration, we have journeyed from the rededication of Goddard Park to the very ground where history was made. We have looked back to a boy in a cherry tree and looked up at the legacy he has left behind. While our formal centennial ceremony now comes to a close, the spirit of this field remains very much alive. As the sun begins to set on the historic anniversary, we invite you to stay and enjoy this remarkable place. Our friends at CMAS will continue launching rockets throughout the afternoon, keeping the fire lit and Goddard's spirit soaring over Auburn. Our centennial ceremony is now adjourned. And on behalf of the Select Board, Town Manager, the Goddard Centennial Committee, and all of our partners, thank you for being part of this 100-year flight. Have a good afternoon.
We are here with the mayor of Worcester, Massachusetts, neighboring to Auburn, Senator Michael Moore, who represents both Auburn and Worcester, and the town manager of Auburn, Dory Vecchio. And yeah, what a day. Hey, congratulations. And the whole nation really now being able to recognize Dr. Robert Goddard and what happened right here. Tell us a little bit about this day from your perspective.
So Auburn is super excited about this day. This has been so important to us. We've worked so hard for the past year to try to recognize Dr. Robert Goddard and Esther, who was a huge part of this. And I'm just thrilled that people came out and that they care and that they want to continue this legacy and that they understand that it started here in Auburn.
It sure did. Lauren has been asking all of the kids down there if they're ready to take a flight to the moon or to Mars. I don't know if she's going to ask the same question of all of you.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? I mean, even just 7 years ago, this golf course held a moon landing anniversary, and to imagine the event then and the progress to today, who knows what we'll be celebrating here next. Do you think if you could take a trip to the moon?
I think I would. I think I would. Yeah, I think, after all of this, and even just learning, this is all educational for everyone. Even just learning more and more about this, it's very inspirational. It makes you want to jump in and get involved. Whether I'd survive a trip to the moon, I'm not sure, but I think I would definitely consider it.
All right, Worcester Mayor Joe Petty here with us. Mr. Mayor, of course, of Worcester, the second largest city in New England. And now, and I see the sign here too, Dory, where it talks about this is like the space trail that there is, and there's sites in Worcester too.
Yeah, we have a trail they're doing over at the Aquarium. We were there last night for the event, the opening up there, and Noreen does a great job. And so this is an exciting event. It's pretty cool, I think. The whole. I want to thank Charles Slatkin and Phil Nidry, who put this together. And they have the house over there in the south part of Worcester. And people should go to that house and enjoy it. There's going to be a lot of activities. WPI, Clark University, Town of Auburn, City of Worcester is a great event next Friday night, the Hanover Theater, open to the public. I think it's going to be at the end of the event. That'll be the last program they have. But Worcester has so much history, Town of Auburn, that you can't forget where you come from. And it was good to see WPI president here and speaking at this event, because that's where it all started, right here. Where would we be without Dr. Goddard today?
Yeah, I'm
Good
not sure
question.
how many people know it, but where he was born, the house he was born in and lived in most of his life is right in Worcester on Talawanda Drive. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and where Charles Slatkin now lives, you're standing right next to State Senator Michael Moore, and a great day here in Auburn, but a great day really for central Massachusetts. I'm dressed up like it was 100 years ago, winter with snow on the ground. You're just here basking in the sunlight.
Well, we have to be grateful that Dr. Goddard didn't have this weather when he was trying to launch the first rocket, liquid propelled rocket ship.
Yeah, and that's really it. That was the difference, and what a piece of history. What do you think going forward, now that we have had this centennial? Do we see more people coming out here each and every year?
I would think we would, now that people know. I mean, if we don't teach history, people aren't going to know how to celebrate it. So by having an occasion like this, letting people from this area that probably don't even know about Dr. Goddard and what he did here, and like you're saying, like the trail going through the city of Worcester in this area, it speaks volumes for the history and how everything. Look at the economy, look at the world, the space age we're in. It all stems from this one event. There's 2 seconds that took place here. I mean, really. I mean, how can you not tie that into someone now leapfrogging from the moon to Mars? Or it's amazing.
It really isn't hyperbole. I mean, this is really where it all started.
There were 2 people last night at the Equatorium from Texas. They actually have a replica of the rocket that Dr. Goddard launched here. And it's all fueled up, ready to go. If you want to shoot off at your house, let me know.
I will tell you that you are actually standing in front of it right now. Now, I don't know I don't know how to launch it, but boy, wouldn't that be a great final shot if I did know how to do
Bob's fire chief would allow you to do that. But,
Well, in fact, they were going to launch this, but today it was a little bit too windy, and I think there is a future launch for this rocket here.
What do you think about the future now that you have had the Centennial, and congratulations, a great success. Did we mention it was a little windy today, but a great success here today?
I think that this is the beginning of just the understanding and the realization that this did happen here. 100 years, people forget. It's time to remember, and it's time for us to continue to honor him and honor the success of our country and moving forward with what he's done, actually the world.
Wonderful day.
Hank, and just as the town manager was speaking, I was thinking about back then. You had this young boy and a man that has this crazy idea that, hey, can I shoot this up in the air? And look what that's resulted in. I mean, I think it should inspire many young children or young scientists or kids that you may think you're a little out of the box, but just look at the potential. Look at the effects it can have on the world. Just that one crazy little idea.
Lauren, that's what you were talking about earlier with all the young people down watching those rockets be fired off and firing them off themselves, about how that was inspiring. You'll be pleased to know, Manager, that we heard from a couple of the kids that they did certainly know who Dr. Robert Goddard was, because they've been learning all this week in school here in Auburn about who Dr. Robert Goddard is. But you're absolutely right. He was reading H.G. Wells, he was reading Jules Verne, and all of that was giving him, just firing up his imagination so that his wife Esther would get the camera, come out here, was right by his side, and then bomb on a stick is what he basically had and did. It truly is amazing. Well, we'll let you wrap it up.
Yeah, and again, there have been a lot of kids here today. One of the girls that was here asked me if any of the rockets today went more than 41 feet, which was what Goddard's went on that first day. And it is about inspiring our kids for the future, right? We're here to celebrate the past, but it's about inspiring our youth for the future. And so, of course, before we finish up, Senator Moore, I just want to ask, if you had the opportunity to take a trip to the moon, would you go?
I would go to Mars.
So that's a yes.
That was actually Dr. Robert Goddard, although I don't know that he was talking about a manned flight, but he actually said he wanted to get that rocket to Mars. And Elon Musk, bring him to Worcester and see what he can do.
I think you're right.
So
Yep.
one trivia question, maybe someone can answer. I know during the speaking, someone referenced that one of the rocket shells was from Roswell.
Let the conspiracy theories begin. That's
There
a
we
good
go.
note for us to end it
You
on.
just did it.
We're very pleased with State Senator Michael Moore. Dory Vecchio, thank you so much. Mayor Joe Petty,
Thanks so
thank you
much.
guys very much. For Lauren Monroe, I'm Hank Stoltzen. Thank you for joining us here at Packagug Golf Course as we celebrated the centennial of Dr. Robert Goddard. March 16th, 100 years ago, he sent a liquid-fueled rocket, and that began the space race.
Good. Now, 10,